Thanks for joining us today for the Influence Women podcast. We're excited to have Rebecca Rogers Nelson with us today. She's an actress, a producer, a screenwriter, and you're going to absolutely love the conversation we have about how you can be an advocate for your cause through media and entertainment. Like us and subscribe to this channel, the Influence Women channel podcast, and then hit the bell below so that you'll get notifications about the next Influence Women podcast. Stay tuned. Hi, Rebecca. Welcome to the Influence Women's podcast. We're so excited to have you with us today. We know that you are a leader within the industry and you have so much to share with us. And I'm going to just share just a little bit about your past. I know that you're a writer, you're a screenwriter, in particular, a producer and an actress, and that you also share the award-winning production company, Beautiful Feet Productions, alongside your husband, Daryl. You've been an actress, you've been an award-winning screenwriter. Tell us a little bit about your past in your own words and your career path and how God has actually intersected and influenced the work that you've done and that you're doing today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I feel very blessed to be on your very first podcast. It's very exciting. Also, my husband's name is Darrell. And I even said to him, I said, "Are you sure you're not being sort of affected with your name? Your name is Daryl, right?" And then they call you Darrell. He goes, "No, my name is Darrell." So he is Darrell Nelson.
Okay.
I know he would want me to make sure that that was corrected. But I have always, I'm the youngest of four kids. And I'm not sure if you have ever heard about birth order, but my mom used to always say, "You are so totally the youngest," because they say that the youngest is usually a salesperson or an entertainer. And I have been both my whole life. So, and as you know, and as your audience will know, if you are in this industry, you are probably in sales because you're always selling either yourself as an actor, or you're selling your screenplay, or you're selling your skills. So we're outgoing people. So I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be at that point in time in front of the camera. And I went to college for acting and got a directing diploma as well, and also a teaching degree, which made my father very happy because that was practical. But also, I started doing commercials for a car dealership, and it was one of these really simple ones where you are on the hood of the car. 6.9% financing is back.
Yes, I did some of those too. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It was money for pizza.
And you have to talk really fast.
Exactly. To get in all their
all their little quips. Yeah, all their little stuff. You got to talk really, really fast.
Yes. So from that, it was actually quite nice because I made money all through college for my books and for pizza and hanging out on the weekends. And then I had this sort of body of work, if you will, afterwards. So when I was thinking about going to New York, I had a reel, which back in the day, we're talking years ago. I'm not going to tell you how many because I don't want to share that.
I'm with you.
But it was a big deal to have that. So
Sure.
by the grace of God, I went to New York City, and within a couple of months had a manager through a connection of someone who had seen my commercials back in Virginia, and booked a national commercial, got into SAG, and I was 22. So I have been blessed from the very beginning to be working with pretty high level income. But then it's also sporadic. It's like you make a commercial and then you don't work for 8 months.
Right.
So my friends would go, "Wow, you have so much money in the bank." And I'd be, "Yeah, because I can't buy toilet paper because I'm scared that I might not be able, So
it's a roller coaster.
Yeah. Most of my friends were not necessarily in the industry, but we were all living in New York and doing the thing.
Sure.
But from that, I pretty much had a steady life in doing commercials and also a lot of theater as part of the Lambs Theater, which I think they're just celebrating their 30th anniversary in a couple of days, which is pretty exciting. They're having a Zoom celebration for that. But the Lambs Theater was right in the heart of Manhattan, did a lot of Christian theater there. And then there was the strike. Very familiar with what's happening now with our actors,
Right.
the SAG strike. So I could not work. So I left town and I went to college. I went to Regent University and I worked on the other side of the camera because I knew I wanted to do something else and have longevity in the business. And I began to, I wanted to direct, but in order to direct, you had to do a writing class. Well, I took a writing class and I'll never forget, I turned in my first assignment and my professor read like 2 or 3 assignments and out loud, and mine was one of them. And everybody in the class was laughing. And I was like, oh, this is fun. Forget the acting thing. I'm doing this. So I really began to dive in and I began writing screenplays. And then I got into a program called Act One Writing for Hollywood. And that took me to Hollywood. And then I moved there, met my amazing husband, and he's also an amazing writer and had won many awards. And I had won awards. And we had these similarities. It was really so fun meeting how we did and when we did, because it was like, me too, me too, me too.
Yes.
And from them, we just knew that we were to be married, even though both of us had had lots of false starts with engagements that we broke at the last minute. I digress. But we got married and we lived in California, in LA, for about 7 years.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So when did you start creating your Beautiful Feet productions and the work that you're doing? I know with a lot of foster care children, I know you and your husband have both adopted 4 or 5 children, and
yes,
4 or 5 that you adopted.
Yes. So my husband and I got married, and we had already been writing and acting, both of us, for years and years. But God gave me the name Beautiful Feet when I was still in grad school. And just that verse in Romans 10, 14 and 15, how beautiful are the feet of him who brings good news. And I wanted, no matter what we did, for it to always be under the umbrella of honoring God, being good news. And so I asked my husband, I said, if we start a company, can we call it Beautiful Feet Productions? And he's like, yeah, I like that. So everything we have done has been under that umbrella. But we've also had partnerships, because you know how this is. Every time you make a film, it's like, not just you.
And that's huge. That's huge, Rebecca. I think people forget that it's a collaborative industry. It's one of the reasons I created Influence Women, is because I want to grow a community of women who are coming together and getting to know each other. It's all about relationships and collaborating. I do this and you do that, and we can do this together. So
absolutely.
It's so important. Yeah,
absolutely. And volunteering to be on sets. And I'm not saying that you volunteer forever, but I do think that you will be surprised at how often, if you show up just to bring coffee or whatever, that they'll go, wow, she's pretty fast at bringing coffee. Let's hire her next time around, because we need someone for that job. And then they move on up. But so true. But yeah, so we've incorporated and started doing PSAs. And as you mentioned, foster care. My husband and I, Darrell and I, got married, and we're very excited to bring forth our first child, Ben, who, was perfect and awesome. And we thought that was easy. Let's do that again. And we couldn't. So it became very clear that if we were going to grow our family, it was going to be through adoption. And after we began sort of, Googling Thailand and all the things that people do, we were approached by a couple, and they said, have you thought about the foster care system? And we're like, no, can you adopt with foster care? And they said, yeah. And there's a seminar this Saturday. So we went to the seminar, and we were like, of course, they scare you to death because they tell you all the bad things. And we're like, well, we're not doing that. But within 4 days, they gave us a placement with a little boy named Anthony, 18 months old. So we had our 2-year-old boy named Ben, and then Anthony, 18 months old. They said the reason why he's been a little challenged to place is because birth mom is 6 months pregnant. So whoever takes Anthony will also take the new baby. And I'm like, sign me up, it's a baby.
Oh my gosh.
My husband tells the story how he hesitated, but he realized he hadn't prayed. And then he prayed, and the Lord said, do it. So we did. So we had Anthony, and then Sabrina came, and then a year later our little Lily came. And so we had 4, 5 and under.
Wow.
That's
You were a busy mom.
it grew fast, right? So when you're saying, there are times when you sort of pull back from career stuff, and that, being the mom becomes your focus, and that's what it was for us.
Right.
And during that time, we had little babies, and in many ways that was easier than what some friends were going through, because we were part of a coffee group of parents, and they were dealing with teens. They were dealing with middle school age kids that had gone through a lot of trauma, and we began to have a real heart for those kids and those parents. And so we started thinking, how can we raise awareness? How can we dissipate fear of the foster care system? And so we wrote really our passion project, which is called The Home Game. And it won all kinds of awards, and it has the backdrop of baseball and adoption of orphans and all this wonderful stuff. But do you know that even though that screenplay and that project has opened many doors and many conversations, it has not been produced yet. So I think we have to really realize that we have our passion projects, we have things that we believe in, but God will bring about those things that we believe in and things that we know we're put on earth to do, possibly through different venues. And I've had to learn that really, sometimes kicking and screaming, because it's like, Lord, this is care for the widows and the orphans, dude.
Yeah,
God, please, let me do this. And he's like, Becky, I've got this. So that's not to say that we won't ever produce that, because I really do feel like we will at some point. But as you know, I did the LifeMark movie, and that was so much a platform for adoption. So I think that God sometimes, will guide you, even though you think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. He will say, no, this is the path that I have you on now, and it's accomplishing what I want, what I need for you to do.
Yeah. So good. So good. The thing I wanted to really focus in here with our interview with you today was the fact that we have a mission in life, and we have that God gives us talents and skills. I think it's part of our DNA. And I laughingly say, people say, when did you become an actress? And I said, well, I used to have an outdoor trash can that my mother filled with costumes. And I create plays in the backyard and create my own stories, even when I was a kid. She even made Victorian Barbie doll clothes for me, so I could create and recreate the classic stories like Little Women and those kind of stories,
What a good mom.
with Victoria. I know. She was,
mom.
But that's the kind of stuff that's just, I tell mothers too, I said, watch how your kids are playing. What are they playing with, and what are they drawn through? It may be the thing that God has given them skills and talents for their future. But to take those skills and talents and then use them for kingdom purposes. We all have a cause, a passion, whether it be building water wells or advocating for women who are being sex trafficked, or pro-life, or whatever it is that we have, foster care in your case. We all have something that I believe God's given us, skills and talents, specifically in media and entertainment. And Rebecca, I often say, if you own a cell phone or you have a social media account, you're in media. And you have the ability to tell stories and advocate for those things by creating content, creating programs, creating writing, producing musical things. Maybe it's an artistic sculpture of some kind, or painting. We're all endowed with this creative process within us. God is our creator God. And so he gives us these skills and talents, and then these passions to create and to share what we can do within those skills and talents to advocate for God's kingdom, to show of his love and care for others. So I love what you and your husband are doing. And I know also that you have much more to do with all of this in the future, because of what God has given both of you to do and you've done already in the industry. Tell us a little bit too more about being an actress. and the difficulties and the challenges you've had with that, working alongside your husband. I often get asked, because I work alongside my husband, what's it like to be as an actress and a producer and work alongside your husband? We talked a little bit about the collaborative business and working with partnerships. How has that been with you? And what would you say to people who are looking to partner with others, and how important that is?
Yes, I want to comment on that, but also what you said so many wonderful things, and I wanted to comment on a couple of them. Number one, what your mom said to you when she was giving you those wonderful dolls and the little clothes, and watching to see what you were doing. I had a similar experience with my mother when I was a little older, and I was sort of lamenting about acting, and my mom said to me, because she's like, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to act, but I feel so guilty because it's like so much about me, and and she goes, Becky, don't you realize that God gives you the desires of your heart? And I said, yes, but that feels so awful and selfish. She goes, no, 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 no. He puts them there. He gives you the desires of your heart, meaning we are responsible to explore those desires because they're God given. And I think that when I shifted it from sort of this selfish thing to, oh, I'm supposed to cultivate this thing and see what God does with it. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stay that. Yes, I'm an actress, and yes, I love acting, and oftentimes I will take roles if I really, really like the material, or if I really, really like the character. And it almost doesn't matter. Like I'm doing some student films right now because I really respect the student directors, and I love the role. Um, but I have to say, my passion now is writing and producing, because I like the idea of having the material that's really closest to my heart to be out there. And so back to what you were asking about my husband, we at first it wasn't so great because I would have him read something and he'd go, now, 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 now. And I'd be like, why? It's
Yeah.
wonderful. He said, no, it's not. And so at
Yes.
first I would be like, oh, he's so critical. And then I realized he's my best critic. I want someone to be really honest with me. So when he says, this made me cry, or when he says, I laughed hysterically, I treasure it so much. So I think kind of getting past the almost familiarity of working with your husband is an obstacle, but once you get past that, it's the best thing ever.
Absolutely.
Also, I
Yes.
mean, we shot An Unlikely Angel in our hometown in Lynchburg, and I remember being on the rooftop. There's a scene that's supposed to be New York City, but it's downtown Lynchburg. By the grace of God, it was so cool that we were able to get most of our locations here in town. But anyway, we're on the roof and we're looking at the monitor, and we're all cozied up in our little director's chairs. And I just looked at it and I'm just like, this is so fun. We're making a
Yeah.
movie in our backyard. It's just so rewarding and so fulfilling. And for the two of us, we have different strengths and different gifts. I mean, we both can write, but I tend to be the writer. He tends to be the director. We both produce. We both have gifts of seeing a problem and solving the problem on a timeline. Okay, now we don't have a baby for that scene because the baby's sick. Where can we get a baby? We have to
Yeah.
really always be working on our feet. And I have to say, doing films in our hometown, which is our desire because we have 5 kids, it is wonderful because I bring in my Bible study gals and they all make cookies for my actors. I mean, it really is like, let's make a movie. So
Yes.
so it's been a wonderful experience as far as that is concerned. In terms of partnerships to see your product or your content launch, it really depends on your needs. For us, we have a lot of the boxes checked. Just by the grace of God, we produce the movies ourselves because we have a resource of amazing DPs and talent. My husband teaches at Liberty University, so we have these amazing students that graduate and they're ready to work, and sometimes we give them their very first paycheck. So it's a really beautiful thing, and we're watching to see who's rising to the top, who's, and when they come back and work for us over and over and over again. Sometimes they'll go and do Hawaii 5-0 and make lots and lots of money on big sets. but they'll want to come back and do ours, which is really a beautiful thing for us. But where we do seek partnerships and where people come to us is when they have access, like PureFlix has a platform. And so they'll hire us to create the content. And Canyon Pictures has partnered with us. And I've got 3 different scripts out there with 3 different production entities that will then partner with us. Now, will we produce it? In some cases, yes. But in some cases, I might just sell the script and they produce it. So, and just visit the set in Canada, So it really
Right.
depends on what the agreement is. But I think in all cases, there has to be a respect for the material and for what you want to say. Because there's sometimes, and there's been times in my past where I've turned in a script and they say, okay, that's great, but can you add a little of this to it? And I'm not gonna. And I've lost opportunities. Or you say the name of Jesus in that scene. Can you remove the name? Because then we could put it on this platform. And I'm like, no, we can't. So I think we have lost opportunities because of that. But what we have gained, you can't outgive God. If you are serving God, if you are saying no to certain things, he will bring it back tenfold. We have seen that over and over and over again in our lives. Definitely.
That's so good. And, I work here in Hollywood with so many actresses that are having to use their skills and talents and are being asked to compromise on their biblical worldviews and on their morals and what they believe, and using those skills and talents to promote a lifestyle and a moral story that is countercultural to what they believe and who they are and what they want to use their skills and talents for. And often, they get frustrated because in our culture and our world today, what we choose for our lifestyle as a Christian is so different in many ways from what the world seems to say to us is, well, this is just the way it is, or this is just natural, or, this is a normal type thing. I can't believe that you wouldn't think of this type of lifestyle as being normal. And yet we know from what God's taught us in the Word, in the Bible, how to live in a world that is different from what they are living, and the satisfaction of that. And
Yes,
so,
and I think what's really
yes,
interesting, if I may say, is
yes,
the world really is more like us, you and me, than the media would like for us to believe.
it's
I
true.
have been so encouraged lately by how successful, because that's what Hollywood, I think, reacts to, how successful
It's a business.
the
It's a
yeah
business.
the Sound of Freedom is. By the
Yes.
way, I picked this up when I was at the train station. I'm not sure if anybody
Oh.
this is really an amazing, this is not like Christianity Today. This is Newsweek a couple of weeks back, and it's Jesus Takes Hollywood. It's such an incredible
Yes.
article because it speaks to the fact that there is the flyover states. You got New York and LA that have been in the past been creating content. The flyover states is who they're creating the content for, as you and I both know, as we all know. But now I think that those, coast areas are finding out, okay, wait a minute, there's money to be made with this more family Americana in, this culture. And, I think that people, certain entities might want us to believe that that's the way everyone thinks, is sort of this more not counterculture, but counter biblical philosophy. But I think that if we were to look closer, there are more people that want to have clean content. And I think because there's been success lately, there's more venues for that. And so I would say to your actors and to your people creating content, don't give up, and
Yes.
to pray about where God is opening doors. Sometimes to do less and to pray more is where God will start invading your sphere. Sometimes we think we have to keep making phone calls and doing stuff. But I think if we really do the right next thing in our own environment, in our own backyards, that God will bring that next thing to us.
I love that. Love that. Well, we're just about ready to wrap up this first podcast cast with you. You've been such an amazing speaker and interview for us. We're so excited to have been able to have you for our first Influence Women's podcast. If you
Thank
could
you.
leave our audience today with one thing that you would tell them about how to start their passion project, they may feel stuck on they've written something or started some type of project and it's just not gone anywhere. What would you leave with a word of encouragement for them, a place that they could actually start and begin to move forward with that passion project that God has placed on their hearts and lives?
Um, well, we just touched on it. I do think that when
Yes.
we pray, we all live in our own little personal bubbles, and I mean that just out of the natural world. We live in our own little sphere, and sometimes we get an email or a phone call or a text, and that is something that God can use to go, okay, I should go over here or do something over there. But I think that in terms of right, like if you're a writer, you write. If you say you're a writer, you get up and you write, even if it's a page a day, and even if it's not on one particular text, you write, because I have files of things that really fun little scenes that don't have a home right now, but you just put them in a file and that can be in your computer. And I do think that deadlines are really important. I know for me, 3 or 4 different films that have gone to the next level, it was because they were discovered through contests. So find some really good contests and submit your stuff, because what the cool thing is you're able to say, okay, I've got 4 months and 13 days until that deadline. So that gives you a ticking clock. And we all like ticking clocks. I mean,
Yes.
our stories are ticking clocks. We're made for ticking clocks. So the idea of
Yes.
having that goal, that's really, really good. And for acting, I would say to get together with other people. And even if you're just videotaping scenes that you guys can watch back and critique each other. If you want to be on a set, I mean, this is promotion of my husband's school, but Liberty University is an incredible program, and beyond it being exceptional in all the camera and equipment and top tier of everything, there is community. So you're dealing with like-minded people that are excellent at what they do. And every student, when they graduate, is responsible for a thesis film. And so you have to ask different people to come on and be part of your thesis film. So you're making friends and you're making connections the whole way. And some of these people, I see them, they move to Atlanta together. They move to LA together. They move to, Virginia Beach together to continue to do projects. Because what you were saying earlier, it is about collaboration. It is about finding each other's strengths and saying, you're really good at sound. I can put a script together, and wow, you're a great scripty. Let's work together. So I think
Right.
that starts when you're generous with your time and volunteering, and also when you're collaborating. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's such rich advice, Rebecca. And, I would just return from India speaking at the Indian communications conference there for several days. And that was one of the things I left with the people I was the Indian producers that were there, and writers and directors and actors, is I said, don't look at me for your next job. Look at the person sitting next to you. Find your group and get connected with them, because it is a collaborative business. That's such rich advice. We need each other. We need to grow each other. I think it's also important that you take what you've created and enter it into competitions and go to conferences and other events where you can meet other creative people. It is, again, a collaborative, creative community, and we feed off each other. Having a deadline is a great thing as well. I loved what you said there. It's so important to have that deadline. So such great advice that you've given us today. Thanks again for being a part of our first Influence Women's podcast. Where can our viewers listen in a little bit more or connect with you a little bit more? Is there a place that they connect with you more?
Yes. Instagram. I'm Rebecca Rogers Nelson on Instagram and Facebook. And I guess on Beautiful Feet Productions, Rebecca at Beautiful Feet Productions is my email. So Yeah.
Great.
Feel free to
Great.
contact me.
Good.
Yeah.
And where can we see your next project? You have a next
Well,
project
there's a
coming up?
couple, we've been stalled a little bit because of the writer strike, but that's coming to a close and things
Yes,
are
praise
happening, which
God
is
for
really
that.
awesome. So there's rumor we've been asked to do a sequel of An Unlikely Angel. But there's also two other projects that I have out there. One with Dan Paulson, who's an incredible executive producer of Chesapeake Shores and Sweet Magnolias, and he has one of my films and my screenplays, and he wants to take it to Netflix. So anyway, there's things kind of brewing. So I will have to keep you posted on which pops first, but I'm sure it's just around the corner.
Wonderful, wonderful. And for our listeners, we will be doing a podcast in the upcoming weeks with Cheryl J. Anderson, who is the creator and writer for Sweet Magnolias.
Yay!
For that one coming up. So we've got some great women lined up. Stay tuned and stay listening to Influence Women's podcast. Rebecca, thank you so much for sharing your joy, your work, your life's journey, and your career with us, and inspiring women to create stories and artistic endeavors that can resonate and change the culture through media and entertainment. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining me today for the Influence Women podcast with Rebecca Rogers Nelson. We want you to be a woman of influence. So join us at influencewomen.org. Become a member and follow us. I'm Kathleen Cooke, and we are empowering you to become women of influence in media, entertainment, arts, and leadership. Join us for the next Influence Women podcast. Bye-bye.